Next up on the Bigger Than Food podcast.
But I'm not gonna lie, it's hard to be the example.
Ooh.
It's not easy to be the example. And so honestly, what we did and what we built, people came in behind us and iterated that and made a better product or a different product. And so we were the foundation. So all of the licks that we had to take to get there, other people came and built on that.
Welcome to the Bigger Than Food podcast, your go-to source for stories that nourish your mind, heart, and soul. Join us as we pull up a seat at the table with innovators, leaders, and visionaries, delving deep into their personal journeys. We celebrate the courage it takes to make an impact and drive change in our communities and beyond. Get ready to be inspired. Welcome to the Bigger Than Food podcast. I am your host, Apollo Woods, and I gotta find a different way to do these intros because every week I get excited about talking to another amazing entrepreneur, a leader in our communities doing great work, and today is no different. I promise you there's no different. And you might get annoyed with me because I'm bringing a lot of my friends and alumni friends from the University of Houston, go Cougs, to join the podcast to talk about their stories. Now, today on the podcast, just like every other episode, we talk to amazing people about their journeys, about the impact that they're making in their community. We focus more on who they are than what they do, because in the story that they're going to share, it'll make sense about the things that they are doing in their community to make an impact. So this one is no different. Today on the podcast, we have a good friend, Ayesha Shelton. She is in Houston, Texas. She is a graduate of the University of Houston. She is a realtor. She is a developer. She is a friend. She's a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. There's a lot of things that she does. So we'll dive into this episode so you'll understand how dope she really is. So I'm going to bring her on. And Ayesha, welcome to the Bigger Than Food podcast.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
No problem. So, on the podcast, we start off with a very simple question, and that is, who is Ayesha?
Let's see. These days, it changes, but these days, I'm a wife and a mother, an entrepreneur, and philanthropist.
Come on now.
Okay,
It's more. It is absolutely more than that. You're oversimplifying who you are as a person. So let's say I don't know who you are, and they ask you just the easy, but sometimes it's a hard question to answer.
Boom. Okay.
So who are you? Who do you like on what's the show Black Panther? Who do they say you are?
Who do they say I am? I am a connector of people, an advocate in the community for homeownership, affordable homeownership, and I mean, a wife, definitely a wife. You know, my husband and I do marriage and real estate podcasts, or we did, and so I am on a journey to be the best wife I can be. And we also work together. We're in business together, and so a part of my journey is, and what I do and how I impact the community is sharing the power of marriage, the power of home ownership, and just trying to be the best person and mother I can be.
All right, you gave us a little bit more. We're gonna talk a bit more about how you got through this journey. So where are you from? Where are you originally from? Where's home for you?
Originally from Galveston, Texas. So
Okay.
BOI, the birthplace of Juneteenth. Now that it's a national holiday, everybody else gets it. But originally from Galveston, Texas. And I knew that I wanted to move far enough from my family that nobody could call me and ask me for a ride to the grocery store, but close enough that if I needed to get home, I could. So a short 45-minute ride from Houston to Galveston is where my journey started, in Houston, but born on the island, Galveston Island.
Okay, so that's actually interesting because many people, I think over time, so being born and raised in Oklahoma, I'm familiar with Juneteenth, of course, and we would always go to Grand Prairie. We go to Dalworth and go hang out at Tyree Park for Juneteenth, and I'm familiar with Juneteenth and what it means to us. But meaning you're from Galveston, What was Juneteenth like for you growing up? What was the Juneteenth experience like for you growing up in Galveston?
So always a staple in the community, Juneteenth was, but I can remember the Juneteenth parade, all one of the largest parades in the city for African Americans. I remember all of the different housing projects they would get, and I thought this was so cool. They would get the young girls together and put together a dance. I don't know if this was a Southern thing, a Galveston thing where you make up dances, but they would make up a dance and then they perform it in the Juneteenth parade. Over the years, as Juneteenth has gotten more notoriety, the national notoriety that it's gotten, my parents have always been a staple in the community for Juneteenth as well. So my mom is the executive director of the Juneteenth Museum in Galveston, Texas, and her and both my father were featured in one of New York Times best-selling books about Juneteenth as well. So for me, it's always been something to be celebrated, and it's just kind of cool for the whole country to kind of jump on board with what Juneteenth is.
That's that's interesting, and it's also new news. So for people who don't watch the podcast or listen to the podcast, none of these questions I ask are scripted. So I'm going to be learning as y'all are listening and watching as well. So you had essentially a front row seat or in the living room watching Juneteenth, this cultural celebration grow up. But let me peel back the layers on that just a little bit more. So growing up in an environment where you have your parents are also leaders in the community, and I recognize that that also influences you as well. Can you
Yep.
remember some of the like earlier parts of childhood where you started to become more aware of the value of black culture being in Galveston, not so much about Juneteenth, but being in your family environment where you start to be more cognizant of like, I have to do something more than just exist in Galveston?
I'd never been a part of the Just Exist in Galveston faction, right? So, besides being the executive director of the Juneteenth Museum in Galveston, she had a nonprofit for as long as I can remember, maybe the last 30 years, Neocultural Center, which is an organization dedicated to African American family strengthening and empowerment. But it originally came about because there was a lot of gang violence in Galveston, and she did a Stop the Violence rally that drew a huge crowd in the city. And I'll never forget this shirt. She made a shirt that had all of the fallen children, men and children who had died because of gang violence. And from that rally came the Nia Cultural Center, which had a Girls' Rites of Passage, Children's Defense Fund, Freedom School, and then Juneteenth with this national recognition in Galveston. It just kind of was a natural progression for the organization. But all my life, from a young girl, I've been a part of the community because my mother has been an advocate in the community, and my father has been a pastor of a church in Galveston. So, if you know anything about Black culture, if the church is one of the foundations of African American culture, and so between being a pastor's kid and a community advocate in Galveston, I definitely had my work cut out for me as an adult in the direction that I would go as far as impacting the community.
Okay. So you're in the it's the pressure of a bunch of worlds, right? It's the pressure of
Yep,
being a PK. It's well, let me pressure's not the right word. It's the
it wasn't right.
expectations of yeah, I can see that. I'm trying to find
I was the best PK. Let me just say, I was the best
okay.
PK. So my parents were not married.
Okay.
And so while my dad was the pastor of a church, I was not in church every Sunday, Wednesday, Saturday. I went to church sometimes.
Okay.
Okay, so I did not have the full pressure of living in a home with a pastor, but I still was a PK, and but not the stereotypical one. No, 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 no,
Okay.
no.
So you got some freedom. You got some freedom of having a father
Yes,
as a
but
pastor. But okay, so let's take it. Let's take it. Let's take the word pressure. You got the pressures of being the daughter of a pastor. You the pressure of being the daughter of a community champion, a nonprofit leader. Um, but how was that like? Like, how was growing up in these different worlds and having these expectations. How was it growing up as a child, as a youth in that? Because that's often different. I mean, not about
Yeah.
the possibility of your parents not being married, but you're in an environment where the norm is it's a different normal for you. Do you remember how that was just growing up?
I do. I had to share my parents with a lot of people, right? As the pastor of a church, the parishioners have an expectation for their leader. And the same thing with my mom, being the executive director of a nonprofit, we serviced families and young girls with the Girls' Rites of Passage. People looked up to her and looked to her a lot. I don't think that was very much a problem for me, more than having to be the model daughter or child because your mother is the leader. So there was very little room to be, um, I don't know, a child, because your natural impulses were always corrected. You know who your mother is, you know who your father is. You can't be out here acting like that. And I'm like, oh, yeah,
Everybody
okay.
knew your name no matter where you went.
Yes, yes,
Okay.
yes,
Okay.
totally.
So then look, Galveston. So Charles Barkley was in the news here recently, and he had his things he had to say. People have this idea of Galveston, and I'm gonna share my first experience with Galveston. I
Uh-oh.
was no, actually, that's actually not bad. I was
Okay.
I was 12, 11 or 12 years old. My uncle, my mom's brother, lives in the colony, and it's in the colony, Texas. And so I always wanted to go spend spring break. So I finally had a chance to go spend spring break with them and my cousins, and drove all the way down to Galveston. So here I am, a small town boy in from Duncan, Oklahoma, going down to Galveston, and all I knew was they said Galveston Beach, and in my head as a kid, I'm like, there's this blue water and there's this ocean, and we got to stay in different hotels as we're going from Oklahoma all the way through Texas, all the way down to the Gulf Coast. We get down, you can smell the salt, you can smell the water, and I'm seeing seagulls and all this stuff. I'm country, so I'm happy. Get down, we check in some motel inn that we were in, and I was excited. Got our own bed in the hotel. I'm excited. I'm new to all of this. Change clothes, get to the beach, run. I'm talking about run. Run to the water, eyes and mouth wide open. Dive in because I could swim. I'm a good swimmer. Swim, and I hit that water, and all I could see was white. Salt in my eyes, salt in my mouth. I felt like everything was on fire. I swear to God, I thought I was going to go see Jesus. It was so bad. I
Oh
got out
my
the water.
God.
I did not get back in the water after
That was
that.
your last experience
That was my that
in the
was my
Gulf Coast?
that was probably my first and last no, that was my first experience for a very long time until I transferred to U of H, getting into Galveston, and then my first cruise is out of Galveston. So for me, Galveston is a part of my story because and even then I didn't understand the origins of Juneteenth then. But I started to be more exposed to things. So for me, it was a great introduction to there's so much more in the world that Black folks do and what different parts of the country look like. Um, but to add on to that, you talked about the expectations and people knowing you, and as you've gotten older through youth and that middle school time period, high school age, when did you start feeling like now I have this expectation, but I'm starting to lead in things, be a part of organizations, and really start to embrace those expectations that your parents had for you?
I don't think that I embraced it until I went to college. So in high school, I just kind of was I kept the status quo. I didn't stand out very much. I left that to my parents. But it was in college that I remember wanting to join the BSU. I think you might have been in leadership when I came. I don't know. But I wanted to join the BSU, and I wanted my friend to join with me. And I was like, come on, girl, let's go join the BSU. She was not having it.
Wait. You talking about
And
BSU at U of H?
at U of H, yeah.
Wait,
Were you
so
ever a part of BSU?
I was. I think that was my first year transferring there. I think I was. But wait a minute. I would have never assumed that about you. Never.
BSU? Why?
No, I would never know. I would
It's the
never
Black Student
assume that.
Union.
I know, but I would never. No, not somebody being a part of BSU, but being that would be your first time being a
Oh
part,
yeah.
like coming into a leadership thing. I just never. That never came to mind when I think about
I
what
think
I know you've done.
I think that I know from the church perspective, they never wanted to show favorites. And so I was never pushed to the front to do anything in church. And then from my mother's organization, I'm young, so I was rebellious more than anything. I didn't want to have to be the leader. I didn't want to be the one to have to step up. And so I gave her a hard time about it, and she didn't push very hard. So there were other people who kind of rose to the occasion of the opportunities that, my mom's organization brought about, and I wasn't interested. I really wasn't.
So then, what changed? So what was it about, like coming to U of H, and then you're like, I want to be a part of leadership? What was different?
That's a good question. I think it's just naturally in my DNA. My parents never, I mean, whatever they did it full out. And when I finally came into myself and had a space where I can have my own identity, not like Bookworm's daughter or Pastor Simpson's
Yeah.
daughter, not, Sue's daughter. I am now a person who am trying to establish who I am and what I am. And so for I think it's just who we are. And I embraced that when I got to college, for sure.
I think that's probably like the maybe a typical experience. You go to college and you're discovering who you are or what you want to
Hmm.
be. And even when I was at the University of Tulsa before I transferred to U of H, I was involved in BSU, but I was always involved in something. Just kind of had to be involved in something, and Duncan just kind of what it was. So it was natural. So that's why I'm surprised to hear you say that was like your first time like diving into, because I would have never
First
expected
time.
that, because of how I see you and the things I observe. I was like, she had always been a part of something. But I could also
Mm,
see the environment that you were in growing up and the expectations you had, that eventually you would be a part of leading something.
yeah. Yes. Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So when you decided that I'm going to start embracing or wanted to do something more, did you have an idea what that was going to be when you got to U of
Mm,
H? Or you were
no.
still trying to figure out what that was?
That college was a great place for self-discovery of who and what I would be, and what kind of person I would be, right? So I love to contribute. I love to make an impact. That's like my thing. Wherever I go, I'm like, how can I make an impact? And I also know that the people who make the decisions, who are at the table, are the ones who make the decisions. So I'm very much advocate for sitting at the decision making table. I don't want to sit back and just let everybody else make the decisions for me. If I think something should be a certain way, I want to be a voice. So I stand in places where my voice can be heard.
Okay. All right. All right. Okay. Okay. So your approach to making an impact is different. Well,
Okay.
your no, I'm trying to change my words. Your approach to making an impact is sounds like a bit more strategic in how you want to do that, because typically the bigger personalities, the loudest people in the room, the folks that get the most attention are kind of thrusted into leadership. But when you talk about growing up, it was other people rose up and allowed you to kind of, hey, y'all go do that. I'm gonna contribute in a different way.
Hmm.
So, which makes sense to me now. When I look at what you're doing now, it's like she's always done something, but
Hmm.
in a way that was different than what people expected.
I
So,
think that
no, go ahead. Go ahead.
like I remember my first house that I bought, I was in an HOA community, and I didn't like what was happening. I think they said I went to a HOA meeting, and they were like, "We want to build a dog park." And I was like, "A dog park? I don't want no dog park." So instead of just like yelling from my seats or complaining about it from my seat, I ran for office for the HOA so I could make sure that we didn't build a dog our in our community. I feel like change is made from the
Okay.
people that are sitting at the table who make decisions. And so I'm adamant about sitting at tables that where I want to make an impact.
Yeah.
I make sure that I'm at the table.
So, but where did that spirit come from? Like, I get that that's what you do, but do you remember or do you have an idea of where did that spirit of here's a way where I can get in the table and be a part of making these decisions, and I don't have to do it how people suspect that people do it, or as a black woman or as a black person does it to make a change. Can you think back on where that approach or that style for you came from? What was rooted in?
Listen, okay, because I'm in therapy too. So I think it comes down to control,
Okay.
and I observe how people exert control or get control. And for me, I prefer to get control strategically than being the loudest person or the strongest person. I'm gonna think through how I want to get control, and then it's not something that is overt. It's very much covert, right? I have an idea in my head of what I want to see happen, and then I'm gonna go for that in a very covert fashion. It's not gonna be like, look at me, I'm standing up at the top of the mountain screaming what I
Yeah.
don't like. I am
Okay.
going to strategically execute it.
Okay. Peeling back a bit further, you said that it's from this desire or you mentioned control, but can you look back and see where that influence came from and how things were happening? And I'm trying not to lead in the answer, but listening to how you talked about describe your parents and your environment, I'm like, could you see there's some correlations with how you've learned to impact change in comparison to how you observed your parents being both impactful leaders in Galveston?
I'm trying
Or
to
it was
think.
just you coming into your own?
I think it might have been me coming into I think it might have been me coming into my own. I know that for my mom, right, she's had this nonprofit for the last 30 years, but she
Mm.
also, before retiring, was in a career that she absolutely didn't like. And she
Okay.
would come home and say, um, 10 more years until retirement, 8 more years until
Yeah.
retirement. And
She
I
counting
knew that
down.
I didn't, she was counting down, I mean, the years. And I'm thinking to myself, now I'm just a child. I'm like, that sounds like a long time for her. That was a short amount of time because of the
Yeah.
amount that she had worked in that role. But I knew that I wanted to have control. I did not want to have to feel that way about the work that I did, and about the impact that I made. Right. So I was also very adamant about making sure that what I did for a living was something that I wanted to do and to take that kind of control, because I saw my mom not have that kind of control in her career in her life until she was retired.
Okay. All right. So that makes sense. So I look at when you talk about that the term control, it's more of how can you influence the outcome that you feel is best for the whole. Because
Hmm.
even fast jumping forward a little bit more, like serving, real estate development, community development, all those things are about people. I mean, you don't just leading is hard. Leading people is can be challenging with all the different personalities and all that stuff. So when I'm trying not to fast forward to talk about the real estate stuff because I'm excited about it, and I've watched you from afar, and I'm like, man, I got all these questions just from me personally. So when you decided to join the HOA, what happened from that? What was that experience of joining the HOA for you? What happened from that?
I think that, I learned more about people, personalities, and what they need. I was also privy to the challenges that people had with home ownership. So it was one thing to own a home, it was another thing to maintain it and everything that went into it. Listening to hardships, because the HOA is kind of the deciding body if we're going to take somebody's house from them. In Texas, the HOA can take your house from you if you don't pay your dues. And so hearing those stories of hardship and understanding how economic empowerment is so important, and knowing your not only your rights but also your options and how to not find yourself in this kind of situation. So economic education was so important. and sharing that with other people and having literally having the authority to change people's lives.
Okay. Um, and then something just came into my head. So you're in. I didn't ask you this question. So you're born and raised in Galveston, came to U
Hmm.
of H, right in the heart of Third Ward, and people have these ideas about our alma mater, and it's right
Right.
across from TSU and all this other kind of stuff, right? So from a, how was the adjustment for you being born and raised in Galveston, and then now you're at a university in Houston in Third Ward? How was that? Was there an adjustment? Was it challenging, or was it like, you know, um, how was that experience moving from Galveston to Houston for you?
From Galveston to Houston. Okay, so I came from a beach town,
Okay.
and was very much influenced by that, right? So my flyest outfit was a pair of Abercrombie jeans, and some flip flops and a Gap shirt. That was who I was. And one of my best friends to this day, actually, she married my husband's cousin, so now we're family.
Okay.
But I met her my freshman year, and she went to Worthing High School. Okay, so at Worthing, my prom and her prom were two totally different experiences. Her classmates would get dresses made that were from the Grammys red carpet. So if you could just think of all of the revealing sheer concoctions that they wore. She actually, I accredit her with giving me my style and femininity, because where I came from, we just kind of all, I don't know, I didn't have it. So it was me walking in, she had me walking in high heels across the campus of University of Houston in Houston Heat, because that's what girls do. Okay. So it was truly a transformative time for me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and when I think about it, I was supposed to go to Texas A&M, but my
Mm-hmm.
mom, this was back in the day when you had to send money in the mail for your application. I
Yep.
filled it all out. My mom was supposed to send it off. She never did. And so I missed the application. All my
Mm-hmm.
friends went to Texas A&M. I ended up at the University of Houston, but God knows where you're supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm cool with that now.
Yeah.
But it totally changed who I was and brought me into the woman that I am today, because of that small move
Yeah.
from Galveston, Texas to Houston, Texas.
It's funny that we also have something else in common with that too. I remember uh, before I transferred, I came to visit Shalita. Shalita's grandmother lived next door to my
Hmm.
grandmother. So I've known Shalita for a very, very long time, almost all my life. And coming for spring break, so I got my polo shirt. I got polo shorts. I'm thinking that I'm coming to the big city of Houston. I got to dress a certain way. I'm looking real preppy. Get on the yard, and I'm at the UC. I didn't know anybody. I was just on the yard, and I remember that was my Neo year, just hanging out spring break. And I'm thinking I'm fly. I got my Doc Martin shoes on. I got my polo on. And it was the bros in the caves looked at me and said, "Man, you look country." And I was like, "What are you talking about?" Like, I feel like
Look at
I was
this.
completely insecure after that, because I'm like, here I am thinking I got polo shirt, I got the belt. I went basic Christmas shopping in the springtime to come down to hang out, and then I started to understand more. So I understand what you mean by Worthing. I
Yep.
shopped at Sharpstown Mall a lot back in those early
Sharpstown
days.
Mall.
those early days. So for me, when you share the story about growing up in Galveston and then also being a U of H too, for me a, it was a it was a different cultural experience, because I didn't get that experience of seeing people lead in that way
Mhm.
and the different cultures of us in that way. So as you have gone in this journey and you um, uh, made an impact in your own way. So as you've navigated through in this journey of real estate, what was it about real estate or community development that piqued your interest in the early days in the beginning? Why did you want to become a
So
part of community development?
I didn't, right? I was supposed to be an attorney. I
Okay.
thought I wanted to be an attorney. And even at the University of Houston, I was a communications major. And I think I chose that major. My rationale for choosing that major was I want to do something that was considered easy. I don't know how easy it was, but something that was considered easy so I can make good grades and go to law school. At the time, I had gotten a work study job at the on-campus child care center and found a passion for early childhood education. I loved that job. And remember, I watched my mom hate her job every day.
Mm,
So the fact that I enjoyed going to my job, I thought, well, this is my passion, this is my calling. So I graduated from undergrad at U of H. I went to Texas Southern University to get my master's in child and family development and begin my career in education, early childhood education.
okay.
But somewhere in between there, I went and worked at a bank in West University here in Houston, which is a very wealthy area in the city of Houston. And it was there that I was exposed to wealth building. It was there that I was exposed to my financial education. I didn't get that from my parents. My parents honestly didn't have it. But I saw how these people grew their money. I saw how they spent their money, and I saw how they invested their money. And they would sit at my desk and transact and tell me why and how they were doing things. And that piqued my interest into financial education. And I read a lot of books. Now, I had all the book sense in the world, and it wasn't until I met my husband that the application came about. So, our partnership, we call it a stabilizer and an igniter. I am the igniter. I have all of the ideas, I get all the information, and he's the person that implements everything that I come up with. And so, that the combination between us two is kind of
Mm,
where that came from. So I was like, man, look at all these things. We could do
right.
this, right? Plus, I have your income. I was an educator. He was not. He was already in construction. So I was like, with your income and
Okay.
my income, we can do this thing. And so we started with a HELOC on a home that I had purchased when I was
Mm,
23 to
okay.
buy a home to flip. And I got it out of education and into real estate because the first year that we
Mm,
did real estate, my husband and I, we paid our realtor $60,000 upon acquisition and disposition of
mm,
property. I was making $55,000 where I was, and I hated my job, and my coworkers gave me hell like every day. So I was like, well, I could just get my license and do this. And we weren't her only client. So I'm like, if she made 60 grand off of us, plus other clientele, maybe we need to switch it up. So that's how it started. It started more of a personal endeavor for my husband and I to grow a portfolio and build wealth for our family, and has grown into what you may see today with what we do.
so, okay, so you were at West University. So that was what time period was that when you were working in West University?
This had to be like, let's see. Oh my God, I'm so old now. This had to be in 2000. Did I have a house yet? This had to be like in 2006 or
Okay.
7, 2000, yeah, 2006, 2007.
Okay.
Um, yeah,
I remember
I
that
was
time
like,
period because there was a lot of development going on. Rice University, West U. I think that time what Bally's Fitness was still
yep,
around there. A lot of things going on in the medical center. So when people hear Houston, they see it from the place of Houston's always had all of this stuff, not from the place that we've been able to see. No, there was a revitalization or redevelopment activity going on for a long time that we just
hmm
had a chance to get a front row seat. Now, during that time period for you, as you're seeing this go on, where did you start visioning how that activity was impacting communities like Third Ward or Fifth Ward or different places? Where did you
I
start
was
becoming aware
not.
of that?
It wasn't at that time. No,
Okay,
too soon for me.
okay,
Too soon for me.
okay,
That was probably maybe 6, 8 years ago. That was probably like 6, 8 years ago, because my husband is from Houston. He's from Third Ward in the Houston area. So it was really his knowledge that kind of propelled and fueled where we are and what we're doing to this day, right? His passion for the city. And what's so incredible to me is that when I went to U of H, I drove around the Third Ward area, and I saw the homes that were on McGregor and in Riverside Terrace. And I remember saying, man, I want to live here one day.
mm-hmm.
And here I am at this big age that I am. We'll just let that stay where it is. And I do. I own property in Third Ward. I build in Third Ward, a staple of the community in Third Ward. And I had no idea that way back in 2001 that that would be the case. But I knew that I wanted to. And so to me, my mind is blown every day that a little girl from Galveston came to Houston, fell in love with Third Ward, and now a staple in the community.
Now, you said 2001. That was 23 years ago. Sounds like a long time ago. Sounds like a long time ago. But when you look
Yeah.
back at it, it really isn't that long ago,
Yeah,
right?
that's true.
And you made the statement that you didn't see yourself at this place now. And like for me, when I got to Houston, I was driving. I mean, I probably circled the block at and around McGregor and on the Bayou for so long because for me, my first black professor I saw at U of H. I never met a wealthy black person that was a millionaire or in those spaces or the debutantes. That was all completely new, which really introduced me to the culture that I would see on like a different world, a Cosby Show. So when you said that you didn't see it's something that you didn't assume, you didn't think that this would be a part of the story for you early in the days.
Nope.
What did you think you were going to be doing back then? What did you think?
I I thought that I was going to get a doctorate in early childhood education and
Okay.
be maybe a professor at a university. That was about the extent of where and what I thought I was going to do. Never in a million years did I have this dream that I would be in real estate, developing communities, and advocate for affordable housing and Black people learning and building wealth.
All right. I've fought this urge off to not dive into that part as long as I can. So now I got the questions I want to ask. All right. So when my influence of being interested in community development actually came from when I transferred to Houston in '99. I had no idea what gentrification was. All I knew is I got French's across the street back when the King Special was cheaper than what it is now. And I was having really soaking everything in so good, and I thought I was studying well. I almost flunked out my first semester because my habits changed, but then as I started to drive, I was like, man, like they're tearing houses down and things are caught on fire, and I'm going to meetings and I'm seeing something different. So when I moved to Oklahoma City, I was like I saw a mirror of what I saw in Third Ward. The community got engaged, pushed back, and still fights and pushed back. When I got here, I didn't see the same. So that was my introduction into community development. Real estate to me is it's really building community and people. So when you got that opportunity, you said it's about 6 years ago. So this is what 2018-ish time frame.
2018, 2019, yep.
Okay. So around that time, when I guess your exposure to things became different, do you remember when it started to click, or when your idea about what you could do in community development was starting to change for you to want to be
So
more connected to
remember my husband is from the Third Ward
that? Mm-hmm.
community, right?
Yep.
And when we were looking for a place to stay, right, we were like, okay, we want to grow our family, and we want to live in the city. We want to move back to the city. Quite naturally, we looked in the area where he grew up in, so the Riverside Terrace area, and what I like to affectionately call Third Ward adjacent, which is like Sunnyside, South Union. Um, and it was a lot cheaper there. So we went and we looked for homes that would be suitable for our family. And because my husband has a background in construction, he was like, we could do a renovation and we could do this and we could do that. And I was pregnant at the time, so I was not interested in living in a renovation. I was like, no, I want a new house, right? So I killed that boy's dreams of renovating a house in Third Ward. I wanted a new house, but we couldn't find anything that we were looking for. So that's when we just started looking at the community in a different light. We were like, there's people like us who want to live in the city, who, this is a coveted area of town, but there is nothing for them to move into. And so that kind of spurred our thoughts for development.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll be honest, when my husband took me to the community that we finally developed, I did not see the vision. And we took about 20 banks through that community, and we said, look at its proximity to the largest medical center in the world, Texas, in Houston, Texas, right? The largest medical center in the world, which is the Texas Medical Center here in Houston. Look at its proximity to um, the NRG Stadium, downtown Houston. This is going to be a hot spot. This is a really great spot to develop or redevelop because there were a lot of empty lots in the area. I didn't see it. The banks didn't see it. And so we galvanized a group of African Americans to invest in this area. So we crowdfunded a bunch of people in Houston, influential people in Houston. We showed them the vision, they believed in it, and we were able to develop. By the time we're done, it'll be about 30 homes in this community. But not only did we develop 30 of these homes, it spurred so much more development in the area. So at this point, there's hundreds of new construction homes in an area that was overlooked and not considered to be a great place to live in the city of Houston. And I'd like to think that we were a part of the revitalization of it.
Absolutely. So I'm trying to make myself go in order and asking these questions because
I'm sorry.
No. You're doing fine. This is me because I've been looking forward to this conversation because you mentioned and I want to share as much as you want about the conversations that you and your husband were having about he had this vision and dream of what could happen, and you are y'all your styles balance each other out as y'all were going forward together to take the step to find a bank that would. But how were those initial conversations between the two of you, two leaders, two visionaries, on what could be done, what you could do together? What were those conversations like in terms of like planning and visioning and processing out how you could make an impact in the third world community?
I mean, I trust the man that I married, very intelligent, very capable. And so it was very easy for me to acquiesce to it, right? So while I sat back and said, I don't really see it, he was very passionate about it and he did see it. And I trusted that. I trusted that vision and I let him run with it. And it wasn't until we built the first house in that community, we like to call it the lighthouse because it was the first new construction in that community in over 30 years. Then I started to see the vision. And then when he would share the vision with other people as we were looking for investors and they saw it, I was like, okay, maybe this is really a thing. I'm an outcomes kind of person. So even when we're building new construction housing, Kevin will walk through the studs and say, man, look at this. And here's this room. And can't you see this? I don't see it until it's completely done. I don't see it until it's staged and beautiful. But that's not my gift. That's his gift. So together, and I also trust, I've seen time and time again how when he has a vision or he puts something into action, the outcome. So it's easy for me to rest. And if he says this is going to be a thing, I'm like, okay, this is going to be a thing.
Okay. You said the first new construction home in 30 years. Have you digested that?
No, yes, no. I mean, it was a thing and it worked out. I mean, it did not work out without its fair share of troubles, right? When you put something new in a community that has no comparables to support it, there's a lot to overcome. As new business owners, the vision was right, the approach wasn't. So, we went and we bought all the empty land in that area. But how we financed that land was not favorable. So if we weren't able to develop the land as fast as we had projected. And so now I'm carrying debt on something that I have to pay every month. So we acquired the land through debt. And all of that kind of just converged and we had to sell most of the land that we bought. So we kept some, we sold a lot of it. We weren't able to realize the full dream, but also completely trusting the journey. And I say this in hindsight, not as I'm going through it and having to sell all the land that we purchased, but in hindsight, completely trusting the journey that God had for us. It was how it was supposed to be. But it became what it was supposed to be. I mean, it's a desirable part of the city because of what I like to call the lighthouse.
Okay. Interesting choice of words, calling it the lighthouse. not interesting. I think there's a reason why you call it the lighthouse, and you also mentioned God. So that's thinking that there were some faith moments in that process. At the same time, I'll say it from me to you. In communities where there doesn't feel like there's a lot of hope, people need an example. They need to see that there's an example of what can be done. Because without the example, sometimes it's hard to dream when you're being constantly reminded that you're not good enough, that that's something that you think is beautiful, others will call it ugly. And of course, going through biases and financing biases and all the redlining and all the historical things, it's hard to see. And even when you do it the first time, think about it. Well, I'm sure you thought about it. In 30 years, first new construction in 30 years, and then fast forward from the experience that you've had in getting to that point, that y'all were a part of the beginning phase of that.
But I'm not gonna lie, it's hard to be the example.
Ooh.
It's not easy to be the example. And so honestly, what we did and what we built, people came in behind us and iterated that and made a better product or a different product. And so we were the foundation. So all of the licks that we had to take to get there, other people came and built on that. I'm not mad about it. At this point, I'm not mad about it. At first, it was kind of frustrating. Like, man, we did all this work. We had to, and in hindsight, it's like we did all of this work and we set the comps and we made the community what it is today. The thing about it is, in order for a community to improve, there has to be housing, right? Because that's more of a tax base that it brings to the area. Not only is it more of a tax base, it's more people making complaints about what the community looks like and what the community needs. So that's also an enhancement of the community, a revitalization of the community. There is a group of homeowners, the first few homeowners that moved into our community, they band together. Now, mind you, this was a blighted and overlooked community. Those people band together, a group of young professionals, to make sure that it was the community that they wanted to see, that they lived in. So they called their council member to complain about the street lights and the potholes. They adopted a family for Christmas. And they call themselves, it's so funny, they call themselves the Park Street Posse. So as the community has grown, they all come together and make an impact in the community that they live in and that they love. And that's why it's important that we do what we do.
Okay, so that part, but you personally, like in that space, where did you find the hope and trust in the process? Because as you mentioned, when you're out there first, you take the blows, you take the unjust criticism, and you have people coming out trying to do a version of yours and picking yours apart. But how were you individually, and then I would say you as you individually and you as a couple, how did you find a way to still keep the hope and faith that what you're doing is still going to be impactful?
Just trust in God and trust in the decisions and the ability of the person that I gave to like lead us and our family. And also because I just saw it was quite obvious. It's like, how could this not be successful? We also understood and knew where the city was developing and what major projects were happening in the area, that if we could get ahead of this before all of this stuff happens, that's where the value is. And so there was also trust, but it was also knowledge too. It was understanding where the city was going and what was happening in the city.
Okay. So then it gets off the ground. You got the first one, and you're an outcomes person, so you got the first one done. What type of fire came after that?
COVID.
Okay, talk about that.
COVID came.
Talk about COVID.
COVID was probably the best and worst thing that could ever happen, because there was this inverse reaction, right? So not only did construction costs, when we did the pro forma and the analysis for what we would be able to make and return to investors before COVID, after COVID, that was nearly obliterated. Now, while we were blessed to be able to return all of investors' capital, we certainly didn't hit the ideal goal that we wanted to. It was there. I mean, if you looked at the pro forma, it was there. The return that we had promised was absolutely there. Then COVID hit. So the skyrocketing cost of materials and labor just literally obliterated. What has to be accounted for is the fact that we finished, because there are some people who started off and did something in the middle of COVID, and COVID came through and wiped it completely out. Like, people had to file for bankruptcy. So what we did was what we said we were going to do, and I am extremely proud of that. But there was that. And when I say best and worst, it also rocketed property prices too. And so it kind of really balanced. So um, materials gone up, but prices gone up too. So it really balanced out more than anything. That was difficult for sure.
Okay.
Um, and then also to have these conversations with people who believed and saw the vision, but also are
Yep.
looking for a return too. I still count it a success, a complete success. The community
Yeah.
exists. It's beautiful. And not only are the homes beautiful, but so is the bonds and the growth that has happened because of it. And so absolutely consider that project a success and looking forward
Right.
to doing more.
So what did you learn after? Well, I would call so this is the completed development, which
Mhm.
I'm assuming this is phase one, right?
We
This
did
is phase
we
one.
no, we completed most of them. I have, out of the 30 homes, I think I have two more left to sell, two more for us to build and sell. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's
So this
we're near the
project
completion
started.
of this one.
So this project started what year?
This project started in 20, if we talk about development all the way to building, probably like 2019. And then we
Okay.
started building in 2020, and we're down to the last two in the project.
So 5 years, 30 new homes,
Hmm.
right? So
Took too
that
long. Took too long. Took too long.
well,
Took too long.
as the determined person you are, of course you want it done faster, but before COVID, during COVID, and now we're on I'm not going to say we're out of COVID. It looks different now, but
Hmm.
that's 30 homes in 5 years that I can't say, I know many people who've done it the way that you've done it. You've done it during a hard time. And when I talk to a few other people, it sounds like you learned to do hard things well. And I'm in this space of learning to do hard things well. So based on what you've learned in that, for that time period, for that development, what did you learn about yourself during that time that you didn't realize, and how you're going to carry that forward?
I think that I learned any redirection is divine, right? So when things don't work out the way you wanted to, it's usually a setup for something greater than what you expected. Because the outcome that we have had, I couldn't have expected. And even the opportunities that lay before us are because of the twists and turns that we had to go through for the unexpected things. So while it's great to have a plan, and you should absolutely have a plan and a direction for where you want to go, as that plan and direction changes, just know it's working out for your good. And so now, when we come across hard things, or when things don't work out the way that we expected or planned to, I can be very settled in the fact that, okay, something good is coming behind this, something different, but it's supposed to be this way. So I can embrace the change. I think that also comes with growth, and with more years that you have on this earth, you
Right.
learn that. In the beginning, when things don't work out your way, you're devastated, you're upset, and it looks like it's bad, and it looks like it's designed to be bad, but
Yep.
eventually it turns out to be what it's supposed to be.
I agree. I feel like you was about to almost quote a scripture when you start talking about how things
I'm
work
not
out.
that good at that.
All things work for those. Yeah. So I'm not gonna do it either. But
Okay, don't do it.
so I mean I'm I'm trying not to. So you have this development, nearly 30 homes completed. When you look at the community around, the people, the activity is up. I know a lot of
Hmm.
people in third world are doing a lot of different things that we know of. How have you seen the cultural impact of the development that y'all have created? First of all, for people who are listening and watching, what's the name of the development, and why did you choose the name of the development, the 30 homes?
Grand Park Square, and I think the area was called Grand Park
Okay.
before, right? But when it was once a community, when it had homes on it, and at this time it's just infill lots, houses that are dilapidated or torn down. And so it just became Grand Park Square. So the name of the development was Grand Park Square. And it is 20 market rate homes and 10 affordable houses.
Okay, so can you, from that during this time, what have you seen in terms of growth and change in the community and people's outlook or their culture, just in general, just to, wherever it comes to mind? How have you seen how the community has responded to Park Street Homes?
So the existing community loved it, right? Like they saw people that look like them doing things in the community that they were admirable. It was bringing up the community that they lived in. And my husband likes to tell a story about there was a contractor on the construction site, and one of the neighbors came out and she said, "What are you doing over there?" They were very good about watching our construction site for us. "What are you doing over there? What are you doing over there? That a black man built this. A black man built this." And we're like, "No," he called us, and we had to call her and say, "It's fine." We use contractors from the neighborhood. So our fence guy to this day, who builds our fence, he saw us building and he said, "Hey man, I just want to let you know I build fences. I would love to help you build." And so he does all of the fences for our project, right? So spurring economic development in the community. And then the people who came, right? A lot of young professionals. I have a newscaster from the local news station, nurses. There's several nurses that live over there.
Well,
Great young professional people of all different kinds of backgrounds, African American, Hispanic, Caucasian, that have come to this community because of what we built and what we've done. And that was not the case before we came.
did did you plan for that? Did you
I
believe that developing in this way that you were going to attract higher income earners, that you were going to attract folks from different professions that would want to come back to live in your community? Did you plan for that?
Let me tell you why the answer was yes. Because we knew what
Okay.
was happening in the city, because we
Okay.
knew of the development that was coming to the medical center, right? We saw the projects that were coming down the pipeline, and the opportunity was right there, in not in everybody's faces, but it was certainly in ours. We read the tea leaves.
Okay. Okay. So you took on this project as a way of looking forward, and you designed it in a way that, I mean, honestly, attracted the people you knew would be interested, and
Hmm.
you painted a vision that people can see and they wanted to invest in. And when you
Yep.
so just taking yourself out of the development in Houston, and you look at what's happening across the country in
Yep.
revitalizing black communities with black people and with black investors, where do you see it going? Where do you see
Yeah.
the interest and desire and drive for people to want to redevelop on their own versus relying on the city or other folks to do it for them? Where do you see that?
Yeah. So it's coming. We are taking the show on the road. What we've done in this community has been a blueprint for what can be done across the country. There are inner city infill lots that need to be developed. There are communities that need to be revitalized, and people see that. What we have to also remember is that it does take money, right? So it's one thing to see it and to want it. It's another thing to understand who's financing it, and how much that financing costs. We learned great lessons with the cost of financing with this project and how to do it better other places. But the opportunity exists all across the country. And so Park Street does have some opportunities that we're exploring in other states that have seen what we've done here in Houston and want to recreate that. And so we have our first project. I don't want to say where because we're still finalizing the details,
Okay.
but it is coming and you will see it. And we want to pick up what we've done here in
Yeah.
Grand Park Square and take it to other parts of the country to have that same outcome.
Okay. So how does it feel to be this woman from Galveston, Texas, living off the water? And then here we go in 2024. You are part of the conversation that there's a model for Black people across the country to look at on how they can revitalize their own communities. How does that feel for you?
I don't think I take it in
Come
that
on now.
much because I'm just
Look.
too busy in the day to day. But it definitely feels like, how can we spur and inspire more people to
Mm,
take up the mantle and do the same thing? How can we share this
yep.
vision, this message with other? We can't do it. We just can't do it alone. We need other people to say, I see you. I see that y'all did it. I'm ready to do it in my community and in my neighborhood. So that's probably, if nothing
Okay.
else, I hope that it spurs other people to see something being possible and doing
Hmm.
it in their community too before I get
So
there.
okay,
I'm just
okay,
playing.
okay. So I'm going to challenge you to take in the busyness of it. Purposeful people, we often get wrapped up into the work, right? We feel good about the work and the outcomes and getting things done, and we get caught up in to go into the next thing.
Mhm.
And I want to challenge you to take a moment to really look at what you've been able to accomplish individually and then collectively, because this will live on well beyond our time here on this earth. So please take a moment to do that because I can see it, and I'm excited to hear it straight from you because it's something to model after. Especially coming from here in Oklahoma City, we don't have that example. We don't have that. That's why I get really excited hearing you share what you've experienced because as an emerging market with much land that needs to be infilled and developed and all different kinds of things that needs to be done here, we don't have those visible examples. So I'm inspired to continue to watch you all and not just watch but take action in that. But the other question I have is when before you say you didn't see it now that you're in it, now that you're part of building community and creating excitement, if you were to tell yourself 2018, now knowing what you
Mm.
know, the 2018 version of yourself, what would you wish you would have had known in 2018 about developing community?
I think I would tell myself to embrace every obstacle that comes your way, and learn something from each space that you're in as you're going on this journey. Because we like to paint the picture of the outcome, how beautiful it was, but not negating what happened and the challenges that you face and how it refined you for the future and what's to come.
Okay. Okay. All right. We're a little over an hour, and I want to give you back your time, but I do have a few closing questions that I typically ask each of the guests that come on the podcast, and they're easy
Okay.
questions. They're not hard at all. First one would be, why would your parents be proud of you?
Because I've been on the news. I'm just kidding. No, because I'm following in their footsteps in making an impact where I stand. Um, I think that I hear all the time how proud my parents are of me, but I'm equally as proud of them because they've done some amazing things too. And so taking up the mantle, I think that they would be proud to say, like, you've made us proud with what you've done and the impact that you've made.
All right. Question number two. Why would Mr. Shelton be proud of you?
Oh, because I'm the power in his back. You know what I'm saying? So everything that you see, the great man that he is
Okay.
today, I'm thankful for his mom, and she did her job. Now it's my turn. And I think that I have truly been, and he'll say this too, I'm his inspiration in the wind beneath his wings, and the things that he's
Okay.
able to accomplish is because God blessed him with a wife such as me to
Okay.
do.
Okay.
Yeah, he's a
he
lucky
got his
man.
fa-
He's a
he
lucky
he got
man.
his favor. He got his favor. All right.
Yes.
Last question before we close. Why are you proud of yourself?
I'm proud of myself because a little girl from Galveston who probably was discounted rose above and is now the person that not only the city of Galveston can be proud of, but certainly my family and my parents can be proud of too.
Okay. I thought I had. That was it. Last one. I promise. I promise. So if I am a person that is from a small community. I have big dreams, and I want to do something impactful. I want to help my community grow. I want whatever that is. It doesn't have to be real estate. It could be anything. They have a dream that they want to live out, but there's some risk involved. And if
Mhm.
you were to give them a word of advice for that person from your experience and your wisdom, what would you share with them?
I would say take calculated risk, right? So when you are safe and comfortable, it's probably the least place of growth, right? So do things that make you uncomfortable, and also make sure that you surround yourself with people who normalize what you're doing, right? If you're at the top of the food chain in your friends and family circle, you're the pinnacle of success. Everybody looks to you as the most successful. That's a very comfortable place to be, and you will kind of reach a glass ceiling of growth and success. And so you want to get yourself around people who are doing more than you and who normalize the things that everybody thinks is amazing and incredible. The people in your circle do this, something incredible like this all the time. It's just like, okay, what's next? Like, okay, you built 30 houses, that's great. What's next? So that you're always leveling up.
I love it. I love it. Aisha, thank you for sharing your journey in this conversation on the podcast today. I'm super proud of you because there's definitely some things I didn't know. I just assumed from my time knowing you on the yard is that like you've always led, you've always been out front. That's just how you came across to me. But to know now that you have a leadership style that many can identify with, that they don't have to be the person that just, maybe they're the most visible or most vocal person out front. But if you understand that you can leverage your relationships, if you're strategic in how you think about it, you can still make an impact in many different type of ways. And we need more people like you who are willing to not just let things pass and look at ways how they can make an impact with the skills and gifts they have. And also that I learned from you today that just because you have an outlook of what you want in life, those experiences still a part of your journey, but it's likely has led to this thing that you wanted. You mentioned being a physician. You mentioned going to Texas A&M. You wanted to go in higher education, all the other things. But I think from listening to you talk, what I believe from listening to you talk, that you still have embodied those desires into what you're doing now in the building community in Houston, in Third Ward, Texas, and wherever that you and the husband are going to do things out in the community. So congratulations to you, kudos to you, super proud of you. So
Yeah.
as we close the podcast, if people want to support you, how can people support you or follow you on social media?
Let's see. Probably my most active social media is Instagram, and it's just my first and last name. So at Ayesha Shelton, where we share some of the initiatives that we have going on, and just kind of what we are doing in the city of Houston and across the country. Stay tuned. Lots of fun things happening for the Sheltons and for Park Street. And let's see. I think that's about it. We just outside. We inside, but on the internet, I'm outside.
Well, again, thank you for joining the Bigger Than Food podcast. And I appreciate your time sharing your journey with us. And so for all of you who are watching this and also those who will be listening, you can follow us on our YouTube channel at Bigger Than Food to watch this show. And you can follow us on your favorite podcast platforms to listen to the audio versions that we'll be continuing to load on a weekly basis. We thank you for your support. And like we always say, our mission is bigger than food, and be intentional with how you spend and support a Black-owned business. And in this case, be intentional with how you invest your money in Black communities, no matter where you are. Thank you for joining the Bigger Than Food podcast. We hope you found inspiration in stories shared today. Remember, it's the courage to take action that drives real change in the world. Be sure to subscribe to the Bigger Than Food podcast for more conversations with movers and shakers who are shaping our tomorrow. Until next time, keep dreaming, keep believing, and keep making a difference.